So I wanted to provide another emergency update for Tesla stock because things are no longer looking bad, but in fact are looking pretty ugly. Now, I made several videos talking about how Tesla stock was likely to fall back in the euphoric highs of December when Tesla stock was at around $485, and I continue to make a series of videos talking about Tesla stock falling down, which by the way you could check out. The videos are up there, they're not deleted. And then we had this, drop, the slow in March. And then we had Tesla stock bounce up right after we had kind of the White House infomercial dealership commercial for Tesla stock. And I made several other videos warning that, look, from a macro perspective, Tesla stock is likely to fall down again. And I got a bit of pushback, as I often do. Anytime I talk bad about Tesla stock and it's just having 1 ounce, one shred of positive momentum upwards, people are like, Justin, but it's going up, it's gonna go up. And you could look at the comments from some of the other videos. I remember someone made a comment around this time saying, Justin, but it's going up, I'm making money. And it's like, are you? Right? I mean, if a stock goes up 5% but fell down 75%, is that good? Right? But nonetheless, we're not here to just have arguments or debates with people who are foolish. Right now, I made an emergency update saying that Tesla stock was likely to fall down, and here we are seeing Tesla stock pretty much close lower than what we saw back in the lows of March. And here's another emergency update. I think we're gonna go lower, and I want to go ahead and talk about that right now. Why do I think that? Well, let's go ahead and parse over to the S&P 500. We actually had a pretty red day. And for those within the Push and Profit private group, right? For those of you guys that don't know, actually, I do a daily briefing where I pretty much break down what's going on in the market every single day for those within the Push and Profit private group. And I made a video talking about how we had this momentum yesterday, and there was a lot of news that there was this fake headline kind of pushing around that Trump was going to pause the tariffs. And that was really bullish for the markets, but ended up being that headline was actually false. Now, for those of you guys that are interested in the Push and Profit private group, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually upload the video and include the link in the description of this video and in the comment section for you guys to check out for free, just so that if you guys ever want to see how my daily briefings look, what is it that I talk about, I'll include that so you guys can kind of get like a snippet of like how the daily briefings look. But essentially in that video I mentioned that, look, despite us having a positive day on the 7th, we were likely to have a very ugly day for the 8th, quite frankly, just because the macro situation has not changed, right? The tariff negotiations actually got worse, where we had President Trump kind of triple down and have this plan that, hey, look, if China doesn't make any agreements, right, we're going to actually do another increase in tariffs. And so, of course, that's not good news. And then we got news from China saying, look, they're not going to back down. And so, of course, with the macro environment not changing for the better and actually looking worse, well, we had a pretty ugly day for the market. And the reason I say ugly, I don't think people understand, this was one of the biggest movements or volatile days, that we had in the market pretty much since the history of the market itself, right? The S&P, I think there was one day that had a bigger swing than what we saw today for the S&P 500. And so what do I mean by this? Well, look, right, the hollow candles, these are the bullish candles. The white candles here, these are the bearish candles, right? Just think about it. The hollow ones are like balloons, so they float up, right? When that's hollow, it's floating up, right? You see it going up. When it's filled with the white, just think of it as sand just put into the balloon, and so it's bringing it down. So now that we kind of just help, because I don't have it with the traditional green and red with the casino looking colors that most platforms will have, simply because if you're going to go ahead and look at the market from a quantitative or technical perspective, you're going to want to go ahead and take the colors away so you could view price action a bit easier, right? And what we see here is what we closed up here, and of course bearish candles, they start from the top and go down. So we had this huge move up. This is where we opened much higher than the day prior, and then we fell down a significant amount, and we're still not lower than what we were at the low of yesterday, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna get there pretty quickly. We did bounce off the 50% Fibonacci level, but when it comes to these technical indicators, right? I always say that stocks do not have to adhere to any squiggly lines you draw on the chart, right? Of course, it's good to measure what's going on in the market when you're using technical analysis, but it doesn't have to adhere to any of these squiggly lines. If we have bad data come out, we could easily see the market break down this floor, right? And so, what's currently going on? Well, let's talk about what we're hearing from the large financial institutions. Before we do so, here's just kind of an update from Yahoo from just a few hours ago, right? So, the Trump administration is following through on a threat to add a 50% tariff on Chinese goods, in addition to a 34% reciprocal tariff, right? So we're getting this triple down effect from Trump, right? He's not doubling down, he's tripling down. And the overall tariff rate on China or Chinese goods is going to go to 104%. So those iPhones, right? Don't even think about buying the next iPhone, right? It's going to cost a huge. We're probably looking at $2,000 for the new iPhone right at this point, right? But let's go ahead and talk about what news came out, right? So we had the small business optimism report come out, and it fell down for the third consecutive month, right? So this is not good news. Pretty much the entirety of 2025, we've been seeing this fall down. Now, of course, it's not far-fetched to understand why small business sentiment is declining. I mean, all business sentiment is declining in this environment. Let's go ahead and take a look at Wells Fargo, right? They just came out with a report today. We won't delve into the entirety of its report, right? But let's just go ahead and read just like this one bullet point, right? Because they mentioned that if tariffs were to remain at current levels, then their models, right, show that inflation would shoot up higher in the coming months, leading to a downturn in the U.S. economy. Okay, downturn in the U.S. economy. Where did we hear this from recently? Well, we actually heard J.P. Morgan the other day say that they have a 60% chance that a global, not a domestic, a global recession is likely to take place with these tariffs intact. And then we also heard Barclays come out with a report like that too. So now we're having major financial institutions saying, look, things are about to get ugly. Now, this is all coming at an interesting time because we're literally in the midst of earnings season. Now, yes, we had some earnings come out today, right? But pretty much earnings seasons is always kicked off with the financial institutions, JP Morgan, BlackRock, Wells Fargo, Morgan Stanley. And then, of course, as we progress, we're going to have more financial institutions, and then pretty much the rest of the companies, the Magnificent Seven, all release their earnings. And what's really challenging is going to be the forward guidance, right? How do you provide forward guidance when we're in this environment where things are shifting and they're shifting for the worse? They're not shifting for the better. Now, all we can do, right, is hope that negotiations take place. But in regards to China, it looks like China is not backing down, and that is going to cause a severe problem for the economy, right? If people just have prices go up on effectively everything, think about everything made in China, right? In the United States, everything's just more expensive. And even something that's not made in China. I know people will say, "Oh, well, what if you buy something that's made in the United States?" Let's talk about an orange, right? Florida. We grow oranges in Florida, but think about all the materials, right, that are used, all the tools that are imported from China to go ahead and just grow something in the United States, right? So it really has a huge impact on the economy. And the problem is this is going to cause prices to go up. Prices going up, it's going to cause profit margins to compress. We're likely to see more layoffs, and I believe we're likely to see more layoffs in the auto industry. We actually saw Stellantis mention that they're going to already fire 900 people, and this is a time where you're going to want to probably not look for a new job just yet, because if you go to a different job, you don't have that tenure, right? You're not someone who is a veteran, seasoned employee. You're a new hire, and who's the first to go? The new hires, right? So I think this is a time where you want to go ahead and work on developing your resume further, right? So if you're trying to stand out, maybe look at getting certifications, right? One of the links in the description of this video has a certification that you could get for model evaluation for fundamental analysis, right? There's if you just check out that link down below, you'll have access to the CFI where you could get several different certifications that will help you land a job. Many large institutions, firms, they have mentioned previously that there's an 87% chance of hiring someone with a certification. So this is the time to really develop yourself and make yourself a good candidate, because it's going to get ugly if things do not change. Now, let's take a look at Tesla, right? Let's actually kind of zoom out. So we're not yet below this linear regression channel, right? And I like linear regression channels because it's not subjective, right? It's using a formula. You're using a linear regression, and then you have the standard deviations up and down. So we're on the lower channel for the linear regressions here. And I believe we're very likely to go to this 190. Now, of course, we could break below this area very easily, right? But of course, when you're using quantitative analysis or technical analysis, right, it's just how you measure the markets. And I believe that Tesla can definitely go to this 190. And you know, I'm glad I've read some of the comments in some of my videos. Some of you guys are saying, Justin, thank you for making these videos. I got puts on Tesla and it's printing money. Look, if you're making money, of course, you always want to make sure you take profits off the table as well to make sure that you're good. I do think Tesla stock can fall down lower, but again, at the end of the day, you need to do what's best for your current situation. And also, I just want to provide a friendly reminder that you should never trade or invest based on what anyone says, including myself, right? You should do your due diligence. But I believe, right, and of course, yeah, I've called Tesla in the correct direction for pretty much the last few years. But that doesn't mean I have a crystal ball. I can get things wrong, but I genuinely believe things are going to get worse for Tesla stock. And I know it seems crazy when we have these bounces, and I'm like, I don't think so. It's going to fall down. And I look crazy during here, but as we progress, things kind of look kind of like as I was mentioning from the beginning. But with that said, make sure to check out that video actually that I posted, which is the link to the private group briefing that I did last night. I know it's old news. It's a video that I did last night, but it will give you insight to kind of how I do the daily briefings if you were ever curious. But with that said, hopefully you guys got some value in today's video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, guys.